High up in the Indian Himalayas, sitting at over 5,000 meters above sea level, is Roopkund Lake. For most of the year, the landscape is entirely locked in rock, freezing winds, and thick ice. But for a brief window every summer, the ice melts. When it does, hundreds of human skulls, bones, and scraps of clothing rise to the surface and wash up along the rocky banks. There are no towns here. There is no food, no trade route, and zero reason for humans to settle in this frozen crater. Yet hundreds of people died here together, leaving behind an enormous mass grave in a place that defies basic human logic. The modern investigation into this site started in 1942, when a British forest guard on patrol happened to stumble onto the remains. Given the ongoing global conflict, British authorities panicked. They assumed this was a mass casualty of Japanese soldiers who had tried to sneak through the mountains and frozen to death. A team was sent up the mountain to examine the remains, and the findings immediately ruled out a wartime disaster. These bones were centuries old. Disproving the modern theory forced authorities to confront an ancient, seemingly unsolvable mass death event that had been hidden in the ice for generations. The investigation eventually shifted to modern forensic analysis to determine what killed these people by examining the physical trauma left on the ancient skeletons. They noticed a highly specific, uniform pattern across the victims. Almost every skeleton had unhealed, circular fracture marks isolated exclusively on the tops of their skulls and shoulders. There were no blade marks and no signs of an avalanche. The trauma perfectly matched the impact of heavy, spherical objects falling at terminal velocity from directly above. These victims were caught in a lethal event. Trapped at 5,000 meters with zero shelter, they were pelted to death by hailstones the size of tennis balls. A single hit to the head would cause instant death. With the pathology finally mapped out, researchers appeared to have definitively solved the mystery of how everyone at Skeleton Lake died. Then, scientists ran the bones through modern carbon-14 dating and DNA testing. The results shattered every assumption about a single lethal storm. This chart shows the chronological distribution of the victims. The first cluster of data points reveals a group of people who died roughly 800 to 1,200 years ago. But the timeline expands to reveal a second, entirely separate cluster of remains. These victims died 1,800 years ago. These people perished in separate events, centuries apart. Beyond the timeline, advanced genetic profiling proved that the victims were not all part of the same local demographic. This map shows two distinct origins for the DNA. While many victims had South Asian ancestry, a significant group possessed distinctly Mediterranean ancestry from the European region. We are left with the reality of completely distinct global populations, separated by vast oceans and centuries of time, converging on the exact same icy grave for reasons that remain entirely unknown. For the South Asian victims, the leading hypothesis is the Nanda Devi Raj Jat. It is an ancient, high-altitude religious pilgrimage that passes through this lethal zone. Local legends speak of an arrogant king and queen who brought a massive, opulent entourage into the mountains and were struck down by a goddess's wrath. But the Mediterranean group presents unanswerable questions. Were they early explorers mapping uncharted territory, or part of an unknown expedition that left the warm coastlines of Europe only to vanish in the Himalayas? None of these victims carried written records. They left behind no journals or monuments, leaving the true purpose of their journeys entirely to speculation. To this day, local lore maintains that Skeleton Lake is cursed, harboring a dark energy that can still be felt in the thin mountain air. This local belief serves as a deeply human coping mechanism, a way to make sense of a tragedy so random and brutal that it seems to defy rational explanation. We can use modern laboratories to measure ancient hailstones or map ancient DNA, but science cannot measure human motivation or belief. Roopkund Lake stands as a silent monument to a lost human history, where the true purpose of these diverse lives remains buried beneath the ice.